Have you ever heard stories about pet sitters who lived through terrifying experiences? Most of them seem to be the product of overactive imaginations or wild exaggerations. But today, I'm going to tell you a true story shared by someone who swore they would never take on this kind of job again. This tale isn't for the faint of heart, and even now, the protagonist says they've never been able to forget what happened on that fateful night. Brace yourself, because this story might just keep you up at night. The irresistible offer. It all started with a simple ad. Sarah, a college student in need of extra cash, stumbled upon the perfect opportunity in an online job group. Weekend pet sitter wanted, generous pay. It was everything she needed. An easy job. Today's looking after a dog and a cat while their owners were away. What could go wrong? When Sarah arrived at the house, she was taken aback. It was a secluded mansion surrounded by a dense forest. The owners were polite, but something felt off. The dog, Max, was big but friendly. As for the cat, Shadow, it stayed hidden under the bed the entire time. Before leaving, the owners gave Sarah a few specific instructions. 1. Never let Max outside at night. 2. Do not try to pick up Shadow if he starts meowing in the middle of the night. 3. Make sure to lock all the doors before going to bed. Sarah thought the instructions were a bit peculiar, but didn't give them much thought. After all, they were paying well. The first night, at first, everything was normal. Sarah fed the animals, watched TV, and explored the house. But as night fell, things began to feel strange. Max started acting differently, as though he was restless. He stared intently at a specific wall, growling softly. Sarah tried to calm him, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Suddenly, she heard a long, distressed meow coming from the guest room. She remembered the warning. Do not pick up Shadow if he starts meowing in the middle of the night. Despite her fear, she decided to ignore it, but the meowing didn't stop. It grew louder, more desperate. Meanwhile, Max was pacing back and forth, seemingly trying to leave the house. When Sarah finally went to check the guest room, she found Shadow sitting on the bed, staring at a dark corner of the ceiling. Sarah turned on the light, but there was nothing there. Yet the cat wouldn't stop staring. The presence. Later that night, Sarah began hearing noises downstairs, footsteps, scratching at the windows, and whispers that seemed to come from inside the walls. She thought about calling the owners, but remembered they were out of signal range. The presence. Later that night, Sarah began hearing noises downstairs, footsteps, scratching at the windows, and whispers that seemed to come from inside the walls. She thought about calling the owners, but remembered they were out of signal range. Determined to investigate, she went downstairs with Max by her side. When they reached the living room, she found the back door wide open, swinging in the wind. I'm certain I locked that, she thought, as she approached to close it. A chill ran down her spine. Outside, in the darkness of the forest, something was standing there. It was tall, thin, and had glowing eyes that seemed to pierce through her. She slammed the door shut and locked every bolt. But the scratching started again, this time louder, more insistent. Max began barking uncontrollably, but there was something unusual in his barks. They sounded more like fear than aggression. The breaking point. Back upstairs, Sarah tried to compose herself, but the events only grew more bizarre. The bathroom mirror was fogged up, even though all the windows were shut tight. In the middle of the fog, a single word appeared: leave. While trying to make sense of it, She heard a loud crash from the master bedroom. When she opened the door, all the drawers were pulled out, and clothes were strewn across the floor. Then Shadow darted into the room, his eyes wide for bristling, letting out a high-pitched meow that sounded almost human. At the same moment, the lights began flickering, and the sound of footsteps echoed all around her. The escape. Sarah knew she had to leave. She grabbed Max, who resisted leaving the house, and tried to find Shadow, but the cat had vanished. When she finally made it to her car, she realized her keys weren't in her pocket. Frantically searching, she glanced back toward the house and saw the figure again, now closer, standing at the gate. At last, she found her keys and sped away. She spent the night in a hotel and returned the next day to drop off Max and report what had happened. The mystery remains. The owners didn't seem surprised. They calmly thanked her and asked only one question: "Is Shadow okay?" When she asked what was in the house, they simply replied, "Some things are better left unknown." Sarah never took another pet-sitting job again. To this day, she wakes up in the middle of the night, haunted by the feeling of being watched. After all, who or what was in that house? Would you accept a pet-sitting job in a remote house after hearing this story? Remember, sometimes a job that seems easy might cost more than you bargained for. If you've had a scary experience like this, share it in the comments.